What's happening, folks? Welcome back to the channel. I've got Kenny back with me to talk about finally what looks like some incoming signing news for Celtic, and it's in the shape of Kasper Schmeichel. It looks like the Danish goalkeeper is going to sign a 12-month contract at Celtic with the option of a second year. Kenny, we've been waiting a wee while to get some news, particularly on the goalkeeper front. What are your initial thoughts on the potential arrival of Kasper Schmeichel?
I mean, it's certainly an eye-catching one. It's one that fans will maybe have a bit of a conflicting view on, because we've got back-to-back Champions League campaigns secured. We've got a 25 million sale of Jota. We've got best part of 10 million for Abada. We've probably not signed a first-team ready player for 18 months. Alistair Johnson's probably the last sort of likely starter that we signed. Joe Hart handed in his notice 5 months ago. So if you think of the net of all that and what they've come up with someone who's 38 in November and is more or less just out of Brendan Rodgers' phone book, fans might think that that's a bit cheap, that's a bit lazy, and that's a bit of an anticlimax. However, if you park that, and I feel the frustration of that myself, but if you park that and judge this transfer individually on its own, what have we lost with Joe Hart? We've lost a big presence in the dressing room. We've lost leadership. Celtic are a bit light on leadership, right? McGregor's a great leader, but yeah, there are other experienced players like James Forrest aren't leaders. We've lost someone that Brendan Rodgers trusts, and above all, we've lost a capable goalkeeper. Now, it's not easy to replace all that. The last time we had to try and replace that was when Fraser Foster left. We signed Barkas for €5 million. It maybe was a bit more glamorous, and we thought, well, that's a bit innovative. That's great. It turned out to be an absolute shambles. That's the worst season and probably in the club's history. And right at its core was an appalling piece of goalkeeping recruitment. So it's high risk replacing your goalkeeper. I think this replacement for free ticks all those boxes. He is a leader. He's going to replace that chemistry in the dressing room. He's going to give McGregor support. He knows Rodgers' system. Where I think it's enhanced is, I actually think currently he's a more capable goalkeeper than Joe Hart. Joe Hart had a good back end of the season for Celtic, a bit of a risky first half of the season, but by his own admission, his body was starting to fail him a little bit. I don't necessarily see that in Kasper Schmeichel. I'm sure he's not playing at his peak, and I didn't watch Anderlecht last season, but of what I saw of him at the Euros, he was excellent against Germany, the absolute height of the game, and he's still competing at that level. He's better with the ball at his feet than Joe Hart. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Now, he's not like an Ederson, right? He's not world class with the ball at his feet, but he can come off his line and command areas outside his box with his feet better than Joe Hart could. Joe Hart's been great for us, but I think at a similar age, Kasper Schmeichel's performing at a higher level. So if you throw all that together and you've got it for free, I think we need to park our frustrations about the recruitment and say that that's a good signing. Now, is it a signing with longevity? No. It's a signing probably for one season. He might, he's probably going to hit a pretty quick decline pretty soon. It might be one season, it might be 2 seasons. But I think that's okay. If we need to revisit our Celtic, their goalkeeping recruitment in a year's time, but we've got another treble and we've performed well in Europe because we've got a solid goalkeeper, that is fine. There's no big outlay here. We're not going to get a return. So all of that is measured. So I think it's a good piece of recruitment. I think it's clever from the club. We don't actually know. We're just speculating that it's a bit of a lazy appointment. I think even if they'd identified them many months ago, they couldn't really announce it until now. You don't announce it's commonplace that you don't announce signings of players who are at major tournaments, right? They need to focus on that tournament. He'll then have had a period of holiday, but we're not going to announce it because he needs to come and do media and do a medical. So even if this was in the offing for a long time and was a strategic thing, it may well be that that's just come to the surface now, and it's just speculating to say that it's a cheap piece of recruitment. So am I mega excited by it? Probably not, because I'd like to see us stretching our legs overall with the finances that we've got. I'm still concerned that we're not deploying our resources in a proportionate way to take us forward. But I was a bit nervous when Joe Hart left, and I think that's a pretty risk-free, high pedigree way of securing a good performance from goalkeeper next season. So I like it, Paul.
I think that's a pretty fair summary you've given there, and we'll maybe circle back to the sort of cons of it later in the video. But the similarities with Joe Hart are very, very many, actually, when you stack them up. Premier League winner at Leicester, obviously. Joe Hart, a previous Premier League winner. More than 100 caps for Denmark. Lots of international experience, as you say. Has just played at the Euros. A really commanding presence, leadership, lots of experience, as we say. Has been exposed to the Champions League as well when Leicester had that little run after they won the league. So, I mean, he ticks lots of boxes. And I think there's no doubt that we needed somebody like that, because the goalkeeping situation as it stands is pretty stark after Hart's retirement. So I think he's very, very similar. And as you say, I think his leadership is going to be massive in that Celtic dressing room.
Yeah, and that's very, very hard to find. And he's got a bit of character about him as well. You know, he's got a bit of an edge to him. He's not, you know, he comes out in the media and he's very engaging to listen to. And all of that bodes really well. He actually played against Celtic for Falkirk 17 years ago. I mean, it's amazing to think that, you know, now he's actually come to the club at this age. And his dad's a big character. I mean, he's not the same player as his dad, right? His dad was someone who changed the direction of goalkeeping globally. I mean, he's probably one of the top 3 goalkeepers ever born, right? There's no shame in not being as good as your dad. But he's got him to fall back on. He's not going to be fazed by going to Ibrox with no fans. We've got a handful of fans this season, but he's not going to be fazed by getting into those pressure cooking environments. He's not going to be fazed at all by going and playing in these testing games in the Champions League. And all of that is unknown when you sign someone. We could have signed someone at 26 years old from an Eastern European league for a reasonable fee, and we probably all would have thought that feels like a clever piece of recruitment. But it can spectacularly backfire, as we saw when we signed Barkas. So all in all, I think all of his qualities are really going to help steady the ship in terms of the balance of experience and youth. You know, we need to be mindful of that. We can't go out and sign another 4 or 5 players that are in their mid-30s. That doesn't work. But when Brendan Rodgers made a similar signing of Kolo Toure at a similar age in his first tenure, he only played one season, but he played a very important role in what was a spectacularly successful campaign. So these things can work. And if it allows us to use our resources, spread our resources more because there's no fee, then that's another upside as well. So I'm excited to see his first press conference. Excited. I'm sure Callum McGregor will be really pleased that he's not lost that sort of partnership that he had necessarily with Joe Hart, because I can only imagine he'll pick up a really strong partnership with Schmeichel. So there's loads of positives from it, and I mean that's the way I would view it.
Yeah, there's no doubt this is a Brendan Rodgers signing. He was actually asked about him just after the friendly, wasn't he, Brendan Rodgers, and he didn't give anything away, but he had a wee smile when he said how good a goalkeeper Schmeichel was. Do you stack that up as a positive or a negative, that it's a purely Brendan Rodgers signing? Do you think that it's good that he's been able to make the call on it and bring in somebody that he trusts, somebody that's played under him, played in his style, or do you think that maybe more points towards the weakness in the recruitment setup that we've currently got?
We'll probably never know the true answer to that, because it won't be in the public domain. If our recruitment team are just floundering all over the place and Brendan Rodgers himself has had to step in and get his phone book out, that's a negative. That's pretty alarming for the future. If they did this together in an integrated way and they're bringing in Brendan Rodgers, they're trusting Brendan Rodgers' thoughts around how he wants to shape the squad, that's a really healthy thing. It worried me when Brendan first came back. One of the first things he said was, I'm here to coach the players. I'm not here to pick them. I'm not, he's sort of distanced himself from the recruitment. And I thought that was really poor, because some of the real success we had when he was first here was when he was very embedded in the recruitment. Scott Sinclair and Kolo Toure came up here on the strength of him, and they were very successful in it. They became benchmark players for what became an invincible side. So there's no precedence to say that Brendan Rodgers should not be involved in the recruitment. He needs to be, right? He's shaping the vision for the whole playing squad. So I'm actually really pleased with that side of it, provided it wasn't him just taking the recruitment team by the scruff of the neck and doing it all on his own. We'll never know the true answer to that. But I think Brendan Rodgers needs to be more involved in our recruitment. He's very well connected and very well sought after. We might not have got Schmeichel had he not been here. We don't know. We probably wouldn't have. But I think that element of it's something that I'd like to see more of. People that have worked with Brendan Rodgers in the past, that trust him, know his system, because there's less risk. So that side of it, I think, is okay.
Yeah. But broadly speaking, I think it's positive. I see the pitfalls with it, but I think obviously he's a top goalkeeper. I'm looking forward to seeing him if he does eventually join. And the reports are that he'll do his medical this weekend. If we get a chance to talk to him in any sort of press conference before the team go to America next week, you guys will obviously be the first to hear about it. But I suppose one of the concerns, Kenny, is you've kind of alluded to it already. The likes of Colo Toure, even take Joe Hart last season. Sometimes when you get to a stage of your career, it just comes from out of nowhere that all of a sudden you feel like your body can't go to the well anymore and you can't push it any further after decades of doing so. So I suppose that would be a concern. I don't even think Kasper Schmeichel himself will know this. I'm sure he feels good and he's obviously a top professional, but does any player ever know when they might wake up one day and think, do you know what, this is catching up with me and I can't push it anymore?
I mean, even goalkeepers, right? There's exceptions to the rule. You know, Buffon played at the top level till he was 40. But even goalkeepers, there's not that many that play at the highest level beyond 38. And that's what he is in November. So you're right, there's a risk there. I mean, he's not getting a game for Denmark just out of sympathy. He's keeping a very, very talented goalkeeper on the bench. The other Danish goalkeeper was the championship goalkeeper of the season. He was played in almost every game for Leicester's title-winning campaign. He's no mug, right? They're not. It's tall order to keep him on the bench. So I'd be surprised if he was playing at that level, that he dropped rapidly to a point where he couldn't cope with the Scottish game, right, over the course of a few months. I don't really see that stark decline happening, but he might get injured. Where I'm a little bit nervous is I just don't think Scott Bain is a relevant backup to a 38-year-old goalkeeper. You might find that we need to assume our second choice. We were lucky last season that Joe was pretty injury free, but when Scott Bain comes in, sometimes he can make great saves, sometimes he makes glaring errors. I don't think he meets the benchmark as a backup goalkeeper. Seagrass going to walk out, so we need to assume that the backup goalkeeper is going to play 15 games next season. You would have to. And I don't like that being Scott Bain. Scott Bain's fine to be a third choice goalkeeper because he's nice around the club. Joe Hart spoke very highly of how supportive he is in that goalkeeping sort of network, that trio. But I think we need to sign another goalkeeper. I think someone a bit younger, someone who can be a bit more reliable, and we can perhaps. It's hard to phase in a goalkeeper for next season because the nature of the position is that you can't bring them on for 20 minutes here or there. So that's a difficult problem to solve. But under that, second string goalkeeper, I think is a bit of a problem in light of signing a 38-year-old.
Yeah, I think we're going to come to the other transfer news briefly towards the end of the video. But just on that point, Kenny, we did have some questions come in on Twitter, and Brian asked, bringing in Kasper Schmeichel on a short-term contract is not going to sort the goalkeeping problem. None of our goalkeepers are presently good enough. Will there be a deal to bring in a younger goalkeeper to get the experience of working with Kasper Schmeichel? And that's basically what you've touched on there. Do you see the club doing that? I mean, I'll give you my opinion. I don't think we'll sign another goalkeeper. I honestly don't. I think that's way too much like common sense and extra work for Celtic to be doing.
I mean, I was going to say you need to carry three. You don't. They carried three last season. You can carry two. Seagrass going to walk, it would seem. He's made some bizarre. I mean, his whole tenure's been bizarre, but he's been vocal about the fact that he wants to leave. It would be crazy to keep him against his will. Look, are they going to go and sign somebody at £3-4 million? And actually put some money behind that and do it in a professional way? No, they won't, because we know that they're not organised enough, and that's not their style. With the amount of money that we've got, and if we want to be a serious club in Europe, that's what they should be doing. Paul is actually spending a little bit of money on someone, albeit they're going to be on the bench. Michael's going to have to play, right? He'll be given guarantees about playing. So someone's going to be largely on the bench, but I don't think that'd be a bad idea, spending a little bit of money on somebody that next season could be their number one. But like you, they don't work that way, Celtic, do they? They'll rest in the world, I imagine.
Yeah. There's lots of things we need to do to be considered a serious club in a European context. Moving on, though, Kenny, it looks like O is travelling to Belgium for a medical and to finalise personal terms with Genk. The latest news coming out of Belgium looks like it's a deal worth around €5 million. Now, sometimes these things are reported with the wages included, so I'm not sure exactly where that stands. But how do you feel about O departing in that sort of deal?
I think that's a good move for everyone. We signed some. It looks like we're going to double our money. I don't know if that includes wages. It probably doesn't, because he's a full international now for South Korea, right? He has his pedigree has evolved a bit since he's came to Celtic. But the problem with Celtic, the problem with signing projects for Celtic, and he was a project, he was raw. The problem with signing projects is they need time, but you don't have time at Celtic when you're trying to win every single match. And he was a bit of a victim of that. I think he didn't lack his merit, so I don't think he leaves as one of these duds. He doesn't leave as a Patrick Klimala, where we just know it was a complete mistake. He leaves with someone who I think is good physical presence. He can finish, brilliant attitude. I always thought he had a great attitude. And scored some reasonably important goals last season. He scored that late winner away at St Mirren when we were starting to unravel a bit. He then actually got himself in a position. He scored a double against Aberdeen, a double against Hibs, and he got himself in a position where he got ahead of Kyogo. Kyogo was benched for a couple of games, whereby that was his moment. That was his moment to grab the jersey. We hadn't signed Ida yet. He was in a reasonable goal scoring form, and Kyogo was out of form. But he just couldn't capitalise on it. And such is the brutal nature of playing for Celtic. You can't wait around and hope that he's going to improve. You've got to bring Kyogo back in. And then his career comes to an end, which might seem a bit harsh, but he's all of those good attributes that I spoke about. He's not refined enough. He can't hold the shape of the team the way Ida does. He does got more of a mature head in terms of playing that position. Edouard came in and was raw, but he quickly developed himself into a more mature player. Also had enough minutes that he had the chat. He did have the opportunity to develop himself into someone that wouldn't drop deep and have that sort of erratic running nature that he had that just led us to believe he was too raw. He had enough time to evolve his game into something more refined like Anida, but I don't know. He's just fallen short. So good luck to him. As I say, he applied himself brilliantly. He doesn't leave, as a prima donna. And you might find that he's got enough about him to go to a league like that and actually make a bit of a name for himself, because he's still a young man. So yeah, wish him well. Good money for the club, albeit I've sort of run out of getting excited when we get money, because
more good money.
What's the point anymore? But I think it was the right thing to do. Hopefully, it signifies that we're down the track with another striker. I'd be surprised if Brendan Rodgers said, "Yeah, let him go," and then we're one injury away from going to starting the season with no striker. That would be an intolerable judgment. So whether that means Ida's coming, I don't know. Yeah. But it signals we've got some degree of confidence in other strikers on the way.
Yeah, just on that, Adam Ida's not in the Norwich squad for the first pre-season friendly. Now, how much you read into that, I don't know. But I think a few of us are clinging to hope that maybe he can come in this week and hopefully travel to America with the team. There's been news the last couple of weeks, obviously, that might be close and it's being worked on. But I think Ida and Bernardo, if we want to bring them in permanently, only bring us back up to where we were last season. And I think even the squad where it finished last season isn't strong enough. So obviously you like to see Ida come in. But if we lose O, and I think if Bernardo does come in and we lose O'Reilly, we still need another central midfield player, Kenny. And that brings me again to another question on Twitter. Everybody knows my thoughts on it and from the videos last week. But how many players do you think we need this summer?
It actually leaves me nervous when I think about that question. We've only got one left back. I'll never see Bernaby again, hopefully. Scales can play left back, but I don't think he played there once last season. Say we have to play him in a Champions League game at left back. Listen, you can't do that. So we categorically need another left back. We undoubtedly need another centre back. We can't go and play Real Madrid or Man Scales at centre back. I mean, you just can't do that, right? He had a great. And that's not disparaging against him. He performed excellently for us, Liam Scales, last season. But Welsh, no. Naroki, injured. Lagerbielka, all over the shop. Cardiff Vickers needs an £8-9 million centre at half in beside him to try and at least pretend that we're going to get through a couple of Champions League games. If we don't recruit in there, it's a disaster. They're two glaring signings. We need another keeper. We need another winger. Who plays in the opposite side from Maeda? Forrest. Maybe he done a great turn for us at the end of last season, but I wouldn't like to start with James and say you're going to play 50 games. Palmer, Yang, the signing we made in January out wide, they've all been really weak. We need another winger, at least one, and we've just spoke about striker. We're now theoretically an injury away from playing a youth player up front when we go out to America. You can't tolerate that. So adding all that up, what's that, 5? But they're not 5 just to come in and refine the squad and make it a bit better. They're fundamental signings, I believe, just to put us in a position whereby we can seriously consider, improving what we did last year, because last year wasn't great. It's lovely end to the season. Brilliant, spectacular finish to the season in terms of how it played out. But let's strip that back now and think, how do we actually perform over the course of the campaign? It needs a bit of surgery. And I'm just frustrated. I'm frustrated at the middle of July with all of our funds, we've not spent a penny. It is very frustrating. Now, the truth of that is you won't truly know until the window's shut. You can't really assess things until the window's shut. They might have a brilliant window and spend £30 million. I'd be amazed, but it doesn't. The direction of it is a bit worrying at the moment. I do think you need quite a few players and first team ready players.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it is concerning. I think when you look at what we've done in windows gone by, you always have this sense that you're going to end up disappointed. And we said this last summer and again in January, given the financial position the club is in, there's just no excuses. There's no excuses for not getting better business done and bringing in a higher calibre of player. Nobody's asking for us to go and sign 7 players on $100,000 a week, but we've got funds there where we can go and sign better players and be a wee bit more ambitious. And the problem for a lot of the fan base, and it grows every year, is that despite the position we're in financially, we never do that. And whether that's negligence or incompetence, we don't know. But we cannot come to the end of another window with more excuses about how difficult it was and how we just can't do certain things and we just can't bring in a better quality of player.
And they need to watch what they're doing in O'Reilly as well. They cannot let Matt O'Reilly go for big money on the 30th of August. Yep. I mean, that happened to us before. That happened to Moussa Dembele. Now, he downed tools. I don't know if Matt O'Reilly would down tools, but at the end of the day, if he's getting if he can quadruple his money and there's a £30 million bid in the table, I wouldn't blame him for going. And he's going to be very tempted to undertake that if it's thrown at him in the last week of the window. They need to try and bring that to a conclusion quickly so that they can redeploy the money and get ourselves organised. So there's a big risk there as well. Yeah,
absolutely, I agree. Just to finish up, Kenny, Brendan Rodgers this week quotes on Daniel Kelly and sort of why he's not involved so far in pre-season due to his contract situation. I think his contract actually expires in January, which is a bit of an odd one to finish halfway through a season, but I don't think there's been an agreement there on a new contract. Rocco Vata has also left for Watford, and there's been this ongoing debate in the background for a long time about Celtic losing youth prospects before they even make the first team. It's a way longer conversation than we've got time for, but where do you stand on that?
It's not a good trend, is it? We're spending a lot of our money developing Barrowfield at the moment. There's little point in spending millions and millions of pounds developing Barrowfield if the products of it just go for development compensation, right? It's a bad trend. It's difficult, right? Celtic are a big fish in a small pond. Quite often, players that leave, it doesn't work out for them. Islam Farouz was the first sort of big one. He went to Chelsea. Disaster of a career. That being said, Karamoko Dembele did sign up when he could have went elsewhere for big money, and it didn't work out for him staying. So I don't think there's a sort of science behind around, every young kit player that's got quality to stay on at Celtic, but we've got to offer to them the absolute height of what we can to keep our young talent. There's probably 3 tranches to that. You make them feel loved, you make them feel part of the squad, and make them believe that they've got a credible future here. Brendan Rodgers is an expert at that, right? That will be happening. You can play them. Have we been playing them? I think we've done a reasonable job at that. We played Ben Doak when he was 16 in a Celtic Rangers game, right? Just threw him in to try and keep him. That might seem a bit desperate, but at least they had the guts to do it. Daniel Kelly at 17, 18 played meaningful league games last season when we were trying to get the points. So they've done that. It seems to me all that's left is money. They're not offering them enough money to stave off the riches of England. It seems that Celtic have the balance. If we're repeatedly losing our young players, we're not offering them enough money. We can't let that happen. Right? You can't indefinitely lose all your top talent. So they're probably going to have to say, right, we need to adjust our own stance here on how much we'll actually offer these young players, because it would seem that it's not enough. Now, it's only a couple of players. I mean, Rocco Vata didn't seem to set the world on fire when he did play. Don't really know enough about Kelly. But yeah, I think you're right, Paul. I think there's enough of a trend there to say they need to sit back and strategically think, what's the point in developing everyone if they're going to walk out the door? Because it's not easy, because it's not an easy place to keep a talented young boy. But yeah, I think maybe just the money is something they need to look at in terms of their overall strategy there.
Yeah, there you go. That'll do us for tonight. If we get any more transfer news, we'll be right back with you to discuss it. Thanks for joining us on this one, and we'll see you very soon. Cheers.